However, this realization provided little relief in the moments when we were bullied. There was a canteen for school children who couldn't go home for lunch. This canteen was in the secondary school. I don't know why, but the excitement of having to be with lots of strange children had freaked me out and I didn't want to rush from one thrilling situation into the next. I wouldn't have been able to swallow a bite either way. I was glad to have gone to the less bad school, where I was also bullied, and I wasn't going to voluntarily go to a school that was even worse. All this during the longest break of the day. So I bought food in the supermarket nearby and ate it in a park or in a spot in front of the church. My food consisted of potato chips and iced tea, nothing nutritious, but at that age no one had to worry about their figure and I knew I would get proper food when I got home. Some children from my village didn't go to the canteen either and kept me company. We often talked about movies and series we had watched the night before and what was going on at school. We made fun of the teachers and the other children. Unfortunately, that wasn't such a good idea because the people I was with at break time wanted to be the popular kids at all costs and had reported everything I said. So now I was in extra trouble, which I didn't need at the time. Every now and then I could go to Jasmine's house and have lunch there. That was nice, but alongside parents we always had to be stiff and proper. It wasn't a relaxed lunch. The parents would ask me hundreds of questions and I knew one wrong answer and they would see me as bad company for their daughter. But that wasn't the case here, because Jasmine's parents knew how mean the other children were and they were happy that she had a good friend who was always on her side. Jasmine had a little sister, she was full of energy and had loads of friends. We all knew even then that she would never have the same problems at school as we did. I don't know why some children can be so open and others so reserved. It's crazy, especially when two such different people are sisters. Looking back, I can't say that sending kids to group activities early on is a good thing, because if you're not one of the popular ones there's a good chance it will haunt your child in middle school. Also notice that children who belong to a leisure group were bullied as a group in middle school. This often leads to situations of eating or being eaten. In this situation, the group picks out the weakest and bullies them so that they don't end up as victims themselves. It's a kind of cannibalism to survive. As I said, school is a really strange time and you learn to survive in groups. Surviving in groups with other children was already a survival skill, but then there was also surviving exams and class time. There were teachers who chose children they didn't like and humiliated them in class. Here you can see how unhealthy such an environment can be. There were teachers who had set themselves the task of bringing the popular children down to earth and liked to embarrass them in front of others. I don't know whether these were adults who had been bullied as children and had decided to become teachers in order to create a balance. Then there were the teachers who were psychopaths and wanted to win the favor of the popular kids by picking on the less popular ones. However, the teachers all had one thing in common: they enjoyed ruling and dominating a group. I often had the feeling of being bombarded from all sides. They compared me to my sister and pointed out where I still needed to improve. The exams were really hard and I always had to spend a lot of time studying. There were weekly exams in some subjects. These were often unannounced exams. Imagine you know that there's an exam every week in this subject, but the teacher makes a joke of never choosing the same day. It must be a special kind of monster to find something like that amusing. The first school year dragged on forever and at the end there were final exams. This was a very exciting and stressful time. We were given topics in every subject that might be on the exam, but we didn't know what they were and so we had to study and memorize an endless amount of material. Cheating was not possible and to be honest, it wasn't my strong skill either. When you are cheating, you're very excited and only focused on not being discovered. This wastes a lot of time and risks losing the trust of the teacher as well as the grade, which makes up a large percentage of the overall grade. I passed the first final exams in almost all subjects. I think it's now clear that French wasn't one of them, but I was able to compensate with English. There was also a final exam in sport. They had prepared various parkours and games for us such as long jumps and time distance runs. It was very exhausting, but as long as you survived you passed the exam. The summer vacation started and I wished it would never end. I was so happy to be away from the teachers and the other children. We didn't have cell phones, and so we had to memorize the house numbers of all our colleagues. As I didn't live in the same village as my colleagues, we didn't see each other every day. But what was a huge advantage if you lived further away was that the school gave you a free pass for the public transport system. I was very young when I started going into the city. I often went out with my cousins as they enjoyed the same benefits. I just wanted to get away from it all and go somewhere where nobody knew me. We walked through the city or went to the river to enjoy the sun. Many also went to the public pools, but my goal was to get away from the kids I knew and not get into those situations. I also played a lot in nature at home and occasionally met up with Jasmine. However, she went on vacation with her family to Italy for several weeks and we didn't see each other often during the summer vacations. My family didn't go on vacation because we didn't have the financial means. At that time there was no EasyJet and flight prices were enormously high. You really have to appreciate how this low-cost airline has changed the travel industry. Today you can find a city trip for less than €100. In the past, such a trip cost several thousand euros and didn't include a hotel and food. I enjoyed my summer vacation and hoped the time would never end. My sister and I forced my mother to buy us a 6-pack of Coke because it contained a free CD with the latest summer hits of the year. We listened to this CD in the car when our parents drove us or in our Discman. That was the evolution of the Walkman, so we moved away from cassettes to CDs. The stupid thing jammed with every major movement and damaged the CD. Over time, there was a further development and the shock stopper was integrated, which then allowed greater freedom of movement and you could even dance. I know I took the Discman to church with me for a while. When my father noticed this, it got me into a lot of trouble. And then the vacations were over again and I had to get ready for school. The first morning was still exciting and there was a certain anticipation until I arrived at school and saw all the faces of the children and teachers, which I could temporarily forget during the summer vacation. The second year was a little easier than the first in my opinion, as I now know what to expect. That's what I thought. A short time after school started, Jasmine came to me and told me that she was moving away and leaving the school. I couldn't believe it. Soon I would be alone at school, without friends, and then what? Now it felt like a countdown and I would be alone at break time. And then she was gone. The fear consumed me and I fell into a deep hole. I was on sick leave for 3 weeks and it made me sick to go back to school. I just felt like crying. I didn't want to go back. I took sick leave until my mother took me to the doctor. When he said I had something wrong with my stomach and I could go on sick leave, I was relieved. But it scared me to see how quickly you can be misdiagnosed. Before things got out of hand, I got ready to go to school again. As I waited outside the classroom, all the girls in the class avoided me. I asked a boy what was going on and he said that everyone was angry with me because I had been ill for so long. What can you do in this situation? I decided to stay strong and concentrate on my grades. In the end, it was my grades that would get me ahead later. Over time, I got used to the situation and, as is the case when one door closes, another one opens. A new girl came to school. She had moved to Switzerland from England with her parents. She was a class above me, but as I was able to speak English well from an early age, we quickly became friends. Her name was Elizabeth but I called her Lizzie. We met up during the breaks and often went into the city on weekends. She didn't like village life and we had that in common. She was of 18 and, with my sister's ID, I was too. We met new people and often pretended to be someone else. We were only interested in having fun and a good time. We felt immortal. We both had to be home by a certain time and so when the night got a bit longer, we were often seen running for the train. She smoked and I thought it was totally cool, so I smoked with her until it got to the point where I bought my own cigarettes. I loved beautiful dresses and high heels. I liked doing different hairstyles and trying out new styles. When my sister once asked me if we wanted to go to the city together, I was blown away. She was and still is my soulmate. I told her that if the two of us were going out on the town, we should do it properly. Not just the next best one, but the biggest one. She was all for it and we got ready. As we walked to the train, people just stared at us. We looked so damn good. Everyone wanted to know who we were and where we were going.